everyone. So I made this Canadian flag out of resin and wood, and I'm going to show you how I did so using a method I don't normally use. So first time trying it, and it came out with some mixed results. My previous method is taking a sheet of plexiglass and then I adhere that to the back of the piece permanently, which uses up the plexiglass. It does work pretty good because it keeps the different colored resins from seeping underneath and blending into each other. But it does use up the plexiglass that you have to spend a lot of money for thanks to a certain virus now. The price of plexiglass has gone through the roof. So I have decided to buy a giant sheet of polypropylene and use that as a temporary backing instead. We do still need to adhere the piece to the polypropylene, and as a temporary solution for that, I'm just going to use blue painter's tape. Of course, that only addresses the outer edge to keep resin from seeping out around the edges, but to keep the colors from bleeding into each other, I have another really fun trick that I'll show you in a moment. But first, we'll just tape up the edges here. You want to get as good of a seal as possible around the edges so that the resin doesn't seep out as much as possible. But as you'll find out later, that sometimes doesn't work. And here's the exciting part where we make sure that we don't seep the colors in between the different areas by pouring a very, very thin layer of clear resin on the bottom of the entire piece. So we just want to make sure we squish it all up into every corner and make sure it's just really thin, because you don't want a thick layer at all, because we're still going to have to pour color on top of it. And then we can just pop out all the bubbles with a heat torch. And because we still have this maple leaf we got to put in there, I decided to put it in while the resin was still wet. So just make sure you put it in there nice and centered so that when everything cures up, it's set in there nice and solid. And to keep the cat hair and dust out of it, I found this lovely lid to cover it up while it cures. So for the red portions, I mixed up a batch of resin with some red tint and some red pearl mica powder and just poured that into the edges, getting it pretty much all the way up to the top, and just have to make sure you squish it all into the corners and make it all nice and even. And then for the white, just the same thing. Mix a batch of resin with some white dye and some white pearl mica powder, and just again pour it all in. Make sure you get it into all the corners. And the method of pouring the clear underneath is actually working really great to keep the colors completely separated, so yay! It's looking really great so far. The resin now just has to cure, and then we can go ahead and try to take the tape off. And here's where things go a little rather awry, because when I peel the tape off, some of the resin, of course, did seep out underneath, which was not unexpected, but that did cause the tape to stick to the wood quite well. It's pretty hard to peel off. Perhaps things I could have done differently, I'm not sure. I'll have to try it again, but maybe a different kind of tape, maybe some sort of a putty. Maybe I should have taken the tape off earlier when it wasn't quite so cured. Not entirely sure yet, but we'll have to give it a try again with some different options. At this point, it's still a little flexible because it hasn't cured completely, but it will be solid by the time it cures up. So after spending a lot of time peeling that tape off, I decided the only way to salvage it is to sand the remaining resin and tape off the edges, which also took a little while, and so then at that point I had to retouch up the paint. Easily done with just a little paintbrush and some paint. That helped to a degree to cover things up. Not ideal, but it still worked out pretty good. Overall, I'm happy with the results, and I didn't have to spend $1 bazillion on a piece of plexiglass. It looks nice in the window. I wish it was a little more opaque, but for next time. And I don't think the tape method would work for a piece that has uneven edges. So that would be something else we'd have to figure out. But all in all, just have to take my lessons and we'll try again next time.